Just a brief history. We know, the antibiotics have helped cure a lot of infections, and they have decreased mortality, and illness from infectious diseases since 1940, when the antibiotics have been used, and Alexander Fleming, got penicillin in 1928, or so. But over the last, I would say, last 10 to 20 years, we have seen a significant and inappropriate use of antibiotics, and what that has done, it has led to the emergence of many resistant microorganisms which are resistant to many classes of the antibiotics. So we are now faced with a situation where some of the bugs are resistant to almost every antibiotic. So you can call them XDR, or extremely drug resistant organisms, and there are no antibiotics to treat them. Local or a national problem, it's a worldwide problem. So apart from the bacterial infections, in the third world we have TB, which is extremely drug resistance, and we have malaria, which is drug resistance. We are just recognizing this in USA more when we are faced with the gram-negative infections resistance.
I think there are three sort of major points that we have to always keep in mind. There's the bugs, as Dr. Nazir has said. There's the drugs, for which we have a plummeting resource because the drug companies are not investing in new antibiotics. I mean, think about it. What do you think a pharmaceutical company is going to invest in? A statin that's used for 20 years, or an antibiotic that's used for 10 days? Do the math, and you can see why. Since I came to Sioux Falls in 1986, where between about a 4-year period of time, there were 16 new different antibiotics. Between 86 and 90. Since that time, and over the last 4 years, I believe we've had 2 new antibiotics that have come. So you can see where this is, and you just do the math.
And the third?
So the third thing is the bugs, the drugs, and then it's us. Dr. Talley, who's Dean Emeritus, famously said in a meeting that I happened to be at, he said, the physician is primarily a social scientist. Now, the public kind of thinks we're scientists. In reality, we're really more like social scientists. And that simply means that we try to bring science into a social context. Because it's never just the bug and the drug, it's always the child who is spiking a fever at 103 degrees, and their parent is deathly afraid that the child is going to die. And so there are pressures on both sides. And so there's both the provider element, and then there's the patient element.
I think South Dakota has outstanding health care. The quality is very good. The 3 systems are excellent. And I think people are very well served in South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota. Best quality in the country is in the upper Midwest in our region, including Wisconsin and so forth. So we're talking in relative terms here. But I think when we first had antibiotics, as you mentioned at the very beginning, they were life-saving. We had nothing before that other than very draconian measures that often weren't effective. Then as we got more and more antibiotics, we felt that we'll just use something that will kill everything, just to be extra careful. And now what we're seeing is the consequences of things, the overreach of antibiotics. And so the reason that we term this antibiotic stewardship is it's very similar to, I have a small ranch in western South Dakota. I steward the trees on my ranch. I take care of them. I try to make sure that I do the right thing for them. I don't prune them, but I do, I'm very careful with them. So antibiotics are a very precious resource, as Dr. Hoffman mentioned, that there are not more of them now. And so our goal is to try to make sure the antibiotics we have are effective for us 10 years from now or 20 years from now if we still need them. So it's a strategy that the CDC and the health department is going to ask us to do as physician leaders and as health systems, to how do we cut back on the total antibiotics used, how do we cut back on the types of antibiotics used, so that we have this precious resource for years to come.
And as a primary care guy, I mean, you guys aren't, but I am, and I'm on the front line, and I can tell you, I feel the pressure from the patient that says, and you mean to tell me I came here, had that time in the waiting room, I'm spending the time to get it, I'm going to walk out of here with nothing? I can tell you I'm not going to be back to you. I'm going to go to the guy who's going to give me an antibiotic.
Well, I
What's
think
your comment
that's,
to
well,
that?
I think that's why we need to work together. I mean, Lord knows the bacteria are working together against us.
They are, aren't they?
And, you know, I don't know any bacteria that prefers Sanford versus Avera, or is going to get on a, actually they'll get on a car and go out to Rapid City as well.
Yeah.
So the point being that if we don't work together, then here's the social science part. If we don't work together, our patients are going to lose. And because they're, a lot of them, and not that many of us, I mean, think of it, somebody has done the calculation, and every one of us, we have about 10 and 13 zeros following the number of cells in our body. We contain 10 to 14 zeros of bacteria. So actually, literally, we walk around and the bacteria outnumber our normal cells. So there are a lot of them out there.
And there are a lot of those bugs, aren't
yes,
there?
yes, they are.
More
And
than
so,
there are cells of us.
Yeah, and so the approach has to be across systems.